all of our plyometric movements, which dominate sports, whether it's running, jumping, lateral movement, there's always an eccentric stretch preceding the concentric firing. And the higher that stretch speed is, the greater the force of the concentric contraction. That requires the elastic properties to be at their maximum. And that's in the tendon, in the fascia, and in the muscle itself. The other thing is that there's a misconception in the sports performance world in terms of what power is and how you actually get it. When you're producing the highest rates of force for a human body, it's because the foot, knee, hip, and the shoulder and the arms all properly align themselves. And they align themselves in specific angles to be able to produce this force. So logically, you would then say that it would be best to be able to train somebody in those angles consistently. And if you can as closely mimic the joint angles needed to produce the maximal rate of force in your training protocol, that would be the smartest way to go about it. And that's what we attempt to do here. Specifically using the throw-offs that we do, that is applied force in a very small amount of time. That's as close as we've been able to come in terms of mimicking the rate of force produced in running or jumping. And we've seen tremendous increases in people's vertical and speed in this application alone. If the biomechanic is right, then you're essentially using strength through movement, and the more it's patterned, starts developing greater strength in that movement range because you improve the neural capabilities of doing that single action. Running, for instance, has a specific sequence to it. When the foot strikes the ground and the foot pushes off, there was a Russian Olympic weightlifter who had hypothesized that the foot was producing more force in the get-off and running and jumping. And no one believed him at first, and then they started testing it and found out he was correct. For instance, Usain Bolt, when he pushes off the ground, produces about 1,200 pounds of force in 0.08 of a second. But that's done through a stretch speed. He's not under intense eccentric load that he has to resist to be able to snap back. What his muscles are able to do is stretch out and fire back very quickly and explosively. It's a completely opposite paradigm. In the running mechanic, it's important to understand that what you're watching on film and what a leg is doing are two completely different things. The foot pushes off and it extends. And the reason people think that there's forced dorsiflexion is they can see the recoil effect of the foot coming back to neutral after it's pushed off the ground. It's been full extension and then the foot comes back to neutral. No one is actually physically trying to lift their foot up, and yet that gets taught worldwide to people. The next thing is this concept of knee drive. Once the foot is pushed off the ground, the hamstring contracts, creating knee bend. And as the other foot now hits the ground and propels you forward, that makes it look like the other knee is driving up and forward. It's not. It's in a stationary position until the quad then contracts, dropping the foot below the knee. Once the foot pushes off the ground and the hamstring's contracted, what then further brings the knee back up is the contraction of the psoas muscle. It's not actually the knee trying to lift up. The psoas has been fully extended and it's at a full stretch, and then you contract it and it comes back to its neutral position again. It's then that the quad lets go and drops the foot down below the knee. So it becomes this sequential movement pattern. And it's very easy to see in Usain Bolt. He does it perfectly, in that his feet are literally firing from one to the next to the next to the next. He is not driving his knee forward. That would roll his pelvis underneath him, and he would now land in a position that is not optimal for producing force for a leg. The ability to relax muscles, allow them to fire at the right time and in the right sequence, is the primary important aspect that you need to train in improving rate of force for running. Mastering the skill sets is such an important factor in achieving athletic excellence. Because if you look at any type of jumping, you'll notice that when somebody pushes off into a takeoff in a jump, that they're in a very relaxed state as the muscle is able to lengthen out. And the faster that they can push into their takeoff leg, the faster the muscles will stretch out and then they snap back, producing a higher vertical. If it's football and you're a quarterback, it's your ability to throw and understanding what the mechanics of that are, and then being able to maximize not only velocity but accuracy. The thing that dominates any type of rugby game is your ability to run, and yet almost all the training systems around focus primarily on muscle hypertrophy, not the ability to run, and certainly not the ability to change direction. To me, that's just a fundamental mistake. The ability to move, to be able to evade, and especially be able to evade major contact is an incredible skill that's needed, number one, for injury prevention, but also for pure performance reasons. We have been led to believe that if you do have the best power clean or the best squat or the best bench press, that therefore you're the best athlete. And that's never the case. Anybody that doesn't believe that hasn't been around enough sports teams where they test consistently who is the best athlete. The guys that are their best players are, number one, on the field all the time and they're hurt the least. But also it's the best player is the one that can handle the most adversity. And adversity being always being able to move, change direction, and handle anything their sport may be able to throw at them. So there has to be an enormous amount of time spent on perfecting those. Because if they're not, you're going to fall short in any type of competitive environment. Until two things are established within a training system, and that you, number one, have to be training the running mechanics correctly, but your system also has to be set up to maximally produce force within those mechanics. And if you do both of those things, not only are you going to get an increase in performance, but you're also going to get a dramatic reduction in injury rates.